I spoke to Kiran Mazumdar Shaw earlier on this evening. Here's what she told me. Well, joining us now, Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, the Executive Chairperson of Biocon. Thank you, ma'am, very much for being with us. Firstly, ma'am, how are you feeling? Are you feeling better?
I think I've almost recovered. I feel fine. And I think, it's good that I, recovered with a very mild experience of the disease, because I want people to know that most people will actually get away with my kind of experience.
And ma'am, again, how bad was it for you? What were some of the symptoms? Can you just tell us if it's not too intrusive?
Sure. I mean, I just basically had mild flu-like symptoms for a few days. I experienced, quite a few days of sweats every 2 or 3 times a day for several days. Mm-hmm. But once I got over that, I knew I had sort of overcome the virus and I was on the road to recovery. So it's about 12 days since I basically was tested positive, and I feel absolutely fine right now. My energy levels are back. I've, of course, never had any problems of breathing or any kind of drop in oxygen saturation levels. And I could continue with a very normal kind of activity throughout this disease, maybe except for 2 or 3 days when I felt a little fatigued. But other than that, I didn't feel anything. And I must say that I feel that most people will actually go through with this kind of experience. So I want people not to panic if they test positive.
Right. Ma'am, that said, and that's wonderful to hear, today, in the last 24 hours, we've reported 78,761 new coronavirus cases. It's a sad record, it's a global sort of record. This being the case, do you believe that Unlock 4.0 should continue, or should it be postponed?
Look, Vishnu, I think we have to put all these numbers in perspective. Certainly, I think the numbers that you talked about, which is a daily surge in numbers, is worrying. But at the same time, you must also understand that now between 65 to 70% of people are recovering. I think we are fixated on the growing top line, which is 3.5 million. But remember, of the 3.5 million, 2 million have already recovered. And I think what we need to do is to keep tracking the daily additions in terms of how many people actually make it, find their way to the ICU. I think that is what we need to focus on. I would imagine that if we can bring those numbers to less than 1%, I think we will feel in a much better shape and state of mind than if we keep focusing on just numbers. Because I can tell you that of this 78,000 that you talked about, most of these people will actually go through with the experience that I went through.
Yeah. Ma'am, I take your point about the dangers of looking only at the top line numbers. But there are some other numbers which seem to indicate that at least in 10 states, we could be seeing the beginnings of a second spike, as it were. The rate, the rate of reproduction of the virus, has gone up.
Yes.
It's at about 2. It was 1.06 earlier on. The positivity rate has also gone up. And therefore, is that a real concern now? Just when we felt that we were starting the process of sorting things out, it's back.
Well, certainly, Vishnu, I totally agree that we ought to keep the R0 number below 1, which is really the sort of the desirable level to be at. As I also said, we should try and keep the severe cases or the critical cases or the mortality cases definitely below 1%. That would give us a lot more comfort. But I also believe, Vishnu, that if people present themselves early, you will be able to reduce mortality. Now, the point is, you've already lifted the lockdown for many months now. And yes, there is likely to be a spread of the disease, because unless you start strictly enforcing certain protocols like wearing of masks and physical distancing, I don't think you can prevent the spread. And unfortunately, many parts of our country are not doing a good job of this. For instance, that a place like Goa has managed to enforce it very well, and they have very low numbers. And some parts of the country who have been able to enforce these protocols have done much better than others. And I think it's really up to state governments. I am very concerned that many state governments have just thrown up their hands and said it's not possible. Believe me, this has to be a civil society movement. Goa is successful because the people of Goa have made sure that they follow these strict protocols. But if you think that only a government mandate is going to get everybody to follow these practices, I think we have to think again. Every one of us has to be very conscious about following these protocols. And therefore, I think you need to get civil society involved in enforcing these kind of measures.
The other key statistic or number in this is testing per million. It's very good that finally we've got our numbers up. But testing per million in India is still at 33,000. That remains the second lowest in the top 10. For us to be able to defeat this virus means we need to confront the real truth. Do you believe that a lot more needs to be done in getting hold of the real numbers? And by that I mean RT-PCR tests and not just rapid antigen tests.
I think you need a combination of tests, Vishnu, because by this stage you've got a population that's been infected in many ways. High viral loads definitely will test positive on rapid antigen tests. People who have actually been silent, asymptomatic, COVID patients who have recovered will also have antibodies to be measured. So I think you need a good algorithm to say, where are you going to do RT-PCR? And by the way, in RT-PCR, pool testing is going to expand RT-PCR capacity. And I think you need to have a combination of all these and work out models that really give you an idea about what's happening in every society or community.
Yeah. At this stage, we are opening up our boundaries between different states in our country. No restrictions on interstate travel. Metros will be restarted on the 7th of September onwards. I understand that it's impossible for people just to be at home, not work. People need to commute, people need to work because things are getting desperate. But isn't this exactly what we should perhaps not be doing now? Perhaps postpone it, given the numbers we've seen in the last 10 days. Again, an upsurge of sorts in at least 10 major states.
So Vishnu, the question I think we need to ask ourselves is, if not now, then how long are you going to keep it locked down? You see, that's the problem. We really don't have an idea as to how long any lockdown is serving any kind of purpose of preventing the spread. So you've seen that, lockdown 1 had a great effect. We had very few cases. Everything was seemingly under control. But the moment we lifted the lockdown, things went bad. Again, you had a case of the second lockdown where some people felt that, okay, things were under control, but the moment you lifted that, again, it surged. So I, for one, believe that you just have to accept the fact that numbers are going to surge. You need to really, really see how you can basically, enforce mask wearing. I really believe that mask, of course, you must take certain measures like not opening up, movie halls, maybe large gatherings should be avoided for some time. Well, yes, you're right. I mean, metro and things are public transport. So for how long are you not going to be able to travel is the question. So I think mask wearing has to be enforced. You have to do some physical distancing. And I think people have to be vigilant.
Sure.
I mean, if I am not vigilant as a person, and if I don't care, then, everything is not going to be able to be contained. But I think all of us need to understand that every one of us owes it to ourselves and to civil and to society to stop the spread. So I keep emphasizing this, saying that unless we all get involved, don't expect the government to just sort of mandate something.
Well, ma'am, it's wonderful to see you better, and I hope you're up and about completely in the next couple of days. And thank you very much for sharing your views. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Vishnu. You too, stay safe.
Yes, thanks.